All right, greetings YouTube and fellow cigar box guitar enthusiasts. Del Puckett here, and in this video I want to talk about mistakes. I actually took a little bit of time and put pencil to paper and wrote down all the mistakes that I've come across while building cigar box guitars, and so I just wanted to share a few of these with you in hopes that you can learn from my mistakes. First thing I want to mention is that mistakes are inevitable, okay? And so I think we just need to have a proper perspective on mistakes. Not all mistakes are bad. Some mistakes are actually happy accidents. But mistakes are really just kind of an opportunity to learn. You know, if you learn from your mistakes, then the mistake wasn't a mistake, right? It was a learning opportunity, right? So, as long as you understand that mistakes are inevitable, you probably will make mistakes. As long as you learn from your mistakes, then mistakes aren't necessarily a bad thing. However, that being said, there are some mistakes that are preventable and avoidable, and those are safety mistakes. In other words, you don't want to make a mistake and cut your finger off, right? You don't want to make a mistake and put your eye out, right? So you want to make sure that, especially when working with power tools, sharp tools, or glass, or anything like that that can harm you, all right? You don't want to make a mistake, right? Okay, so that being said, I want to address some of these line items here, and maybe you can relate to some of these. Obviously, some of these are no-brainers, but these are things that I've learned through the last couple of years of building cigar box guitars. So this might be a little lengthy video, but stick around and stay tuned, and I'm sure you might pick up a tip or two. All right, these are in no particular order. I just kind of wrote them down, so I'm just going to like throw them at you kind of in the order that I wrote them down. Like I said, no particular order of importance, just in the order that I remembered them. So first off, gluing the heel. Here is a blank. And one time I do remember that I glued up a heel and I didn't properly clean these edges, and so when I glued them together, of course I clamped them and I waited for them to dry. As soon as I put the string tension on, blink, popped apart. And I was like, what the heck? And then as I looked at it, it's like, oh yeah, okay, there was still some paint and some dirt on there that I didn't clean off. So whenever you're gluing two pieces of wood together, make sure that these both are smooth and clean and sanded if necessary, so that the glue can have something to stick to. All right, next little mistake I have listed here is painting on oil. All right, I remember one time I oiled up with linseed oil a neck, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought maybe I could like spray some shellac on it or something, and so I did that and it just started bubbling up. All right, so that's maybe just a lack of common sense, but for me it was a learning experience, and I never made that mistake again. All right, this next mistake I want to talk about is grounding these potentiometers. Typically we ground this tab here to the chassis, and that creates a normal clockwise increase and counterclock decrease of the volume. However, if you accidentally ground the left side here, then that's going to change the rotation. In other words, if you go clockwise, that will decrease, and counterclockwise will increase. It will be actually backwards. And I realized that after I soldered up a guitar and I went to go turn it up and it went down, and I turned it down and it went up, and I was like, what the heck? So that's one of those examples of a happy accident, because that will work perfect for a lefty guitar. All right, the next mistake that I learned not to do is tying up and securing loose wires. Listen to this. Hear that? That's a loose wire. So what I like to use is glue gun and or wire ties, right, to secure those loose wires. And if they're jumping from here to there, you know, whatever it takes, you know what I'm saying, when it's all said and done, everything is all neat and nice and tidy, and so that whenever you do shake it, right, this is what it sounds like. Nothing, right? Instead of having the loose wire and having it sound like. All right, this is an important one. Double check all of your electronics before you button it up and put on the strings and tune it up, right? Because nothing is more frustrating than you get it all dialed in and then you go and it's like, oh no, the volume doesn't work. Or dang it, I plug it in and it's not working, or the pickup's in backwards or something. I can't tell you how frustrating it is to have to go back, take off the strings, open it up, get in there, resolder, reposition, blah, 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 because you didn't take the time to simply just double check it at first. So double check all your wiring before you button it all up, and you will save yourself a lot of frustration. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is installing your tuners. Okay, so the reason why this thing has got paint on it is because I originally drilled the holes and they were in the wrong spot, so I didn't get these nice straight string pulls, right? They were all at a weird angle and stuff like that. And so I put a dowel in it, glued it up, let it dry, and then re-drilled another one, and then, oh my gosh, if that wasn't in the wrong place also. So yeah, so by the time I finally got it right, there was all these dowels in there, and so I had to end up painting it so that you wouldn't see them. So now it's just, for me, it's just eyeballing, but one thing you want to keep in mind here is you don't want to get them too close together either, because if they're too close together and too crowded in there, you have to end up like grinding them or filing them off so that you get them close together. So you want to make sure that they're spaced properly and that they're the right and the left are coordinated such that they're on the right side. And then you want to position them such, right, so that you have straight string pull as close as you can. I remember one time I made this stupid mistake. Here's the fretboards, here's the neck, and typically you just glue these bad boys on here, right? Well, I remember one time I glued this thing on bass-ackwards, and I didn't realize it until all the glue had dried, and I went and I'm like, all like, whoa, 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 oh no. And it was already dried off to the point where when I took it all apart, it just destroyed it, right? So that was just an oversight, obviously, but yeah, just pay attention, make sure that the fat gaps are on this side and then the skinny gaps are on this side here. That's dumb. All right, on most of my builds, I screw in the through the body neck from the back, right, securing it in there. That means the top can open. One thing I remember doing one time was gluing that thing in place, and I didn't think anything about it until the neck started bowing, and I thought, well, I could just get in there and shim it. Then I opened it up and I realized, oh no, I can't, because I glued it in place. Oh! All right, I recommend getting yourself some of these fretting templates. I get mine at cbgiddy.com. These things here will save you a load of hassle. Okay, but here, see how this, it's a wide here. What you want to do is you want your string launch to be right here at this leading edge. Okay, I remember building guitars and I would put these bolts for the nut, and the positioning of this bolt was like kind of critical. I didn't realize it here, but the string actually launches from the top of this thing here, right? So I had to coordinate the top or the center of this thing, of this bolt here, with that leading edge here. Okay, man, I tell you what, that was a frustration, man, getting that right. I've since then gone to the 0 fret, so I use a jumbo fret here, and then of course I'll score it with a file to keep the strings from jumping around here. But the positioning of your nut or your 0 fret in relationship to all your other frets, I can't tell you, that's very, very, very huge. If that's not correct, you'll have intonation problems, your guitar will never sound or play right, and you will just be frustrated, and you'll be tuning forever and never getting it right. All right, this next mistake actually is a real mistake. It really actually happened, and it was a mistake. I didn't do it on purpose. But see how I put these blocks in here, and that is to screw the tops into it, right? Well, one time I had a real thick piece of wood here, right? It was a thick wall cigar box, and I thought I could just screw right into that. So I did, but the screw actually missed the wood. I couldn't tell because I didn't reopen it back up again afterward. But I got word from the owner of that guitar saying, "Hey, what's the deal?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's the deal?" He's like, "Yeah, the screw's not even in the wood." I'm like, "Really?" So yeah, so that was a fail, and could have been easily avoided if I was just paying attention. And then there was that one time when I plugged into this guitar and it sounded like crap. I'm like, what the heck? And you know, he kind of like, what's the deal here? So it's like I opened it up, and sure enough, man, the piezo came unglued from the top, and it was just kind of bouncing around in there. It was all loose. It wasn't making any sound at all. So I was like, wow, all right. So the key learning on that is glue your piezos, make sure that they're solid and in place, because they might come loose. And then, believe it or not, there was this one time I built this awesome neck, and I went to go put the inlays in, and so I'm just like doing my thing. I think I was doing inlays, and then all of a sudden I realized, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh crap! I had put the double dot, which is supposed to be on the 12th fret. I accidentally put it on the 11th fret. So accidents are going to happen, man. They're going to happen. What are you going to do about it? Okay, as a builder, you want to be conscientious and quality minded. And if you look at this board here, you can see how it's got a big old nasty curve in it. It's got a warp and a twist. All right, so it would be a mistake, all right, to use this. Now you can see these horizontal grains in the wood there, right? So choosing this board for a neck would be a mistake, right? You want to use vertical grain. That is a mistake that I'm going to avoid. But one thing I did want to point out, and this is not a mistake necessarily, but it's more of a quality thing, and that is to be sure to file your fret ends and then sand them smooth so they don't spike out there, and so when you run your finger across them or your hand, you don't feel them, right? Guitars that have these frets that pop out like that, I don't know if that's a mistake or if that's just a lack of attention to detail, but that drives me nuts. All right, one thing I learned by making a mistake was that you don't mix wound strings. You don't mix wound strings with unwound strings. Doesn't matter what the name of the string is. If you're going to go with wound, go with all wound. And if you're going to go with unwound, go with all unwound. Okay, you don't want to cross-pollinate and mix those up, or you will have intonation problems, especially if you have a straight line here for your saddle. Now, if you have one of these individually adjustable saddle, then you can get away with it. However, if your saddle is a straight saddle, you can't mix those or you will have intonation problems. All right, here's a legitimate mistake. I did a string through the body here. However, when I was drilling this thing here, I wasn't entirely straight with my drill, because the way it turned out on the back here is it kind of got jiggy there. So yeah, I was freehanding that thing. Another thing to keep in mind too, whenever you are doing these through the bodies here, strings through the body, is that you want to have enough space between your saddle and your strings so that those strings aren't pushing that saddle back, right? Because these this angle here is going to want to push that saddle that way, right? Well, if your intonation is such that it's got to be back in here, then you might have a problem. So make sure, give yourself enough room here from where these strings escape out to where your saddle needs to be. So about maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches is preferable there. I remember one time I actually put, I had a string through the body here, and where my saddle needed to be was too close. So as soon as I tuned it up, that saddle would move over. And boy, was that frustrating. I had to end up putting a plate underneath there to hold that saddle in place. Just because my string through and my saddle were too close together. So that's something that can be avoidable. All right, one thing you want to keep in mind while you're notching out is when you're measuring, right, you want to measure the same on both sides. And what you measure for the top side, you also want to measure on the inside where this guy goes, right? And the reason being is because you want that neck, right, to be square. Okay? You don't want there to be any kind of a weird angle, right, to your neck in relationship to the box. So, again, this is a mistake that's easily avoidable, right? Measure, and whatever that distance is, make sure it's the same on this side, right? So it's centered. And then use those exact same numbers on the inside here, right? And then put like little marks so that you know that you're exactly centered on this side as you are on this side, and that'll ensure that your neck is perpendicular or straight or perfectly square in relationship to your box. Trust me when I say it matters. All right, I told you this was going to be a long video. Hopefully you've learned a thing or two from my mistakes. I know I've learned by making mistakes. So if you make a mistake in something, it's probably going to be okay. There's, like I said, there's no mistake that can't be fixed or can't be remedied or can't be embraced somehow. Pay attention to the things that need to be paid attention to, and let the chips kind of fall where they are. I mean, there's a time to be symmetrical and to measure twice and cut once, obviously, and there's a time to like just kind of roll with it. Like, say for example, this guy here. I mean, these sound holes aren't exactly centered. I have a little bit of a small gap here and a large gap there, right? But dude, it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what gives it some character, right? So go ahead and make some mistakes. Some of those mistakes that you're going to see are going to be happy accidents that you would have never have stumbled on any other way. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure I'm leaving something out, but you know, we could go all night and stuff like that. So anyhow, may your mistakes be few and your discoveries awesome.